till he appeared and the soul felt its worth.
I don't know about you, but I've been listening to a lot of Oh Holy Night this Christmas season. I'm grateful to have Peggy singing it, bringing us into worship this evening. Does anybody else have a Christmas song that's been stuck on repeat? Am I the only one? But this year, as I listened to that familiar carol, I kept returning to one line in particular, one phrase. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. I thought, well, that's kind of a strange set of phrases. In sin and error pining, what the heck does that mean? The more I sat with it, the more I kept coming back to how it can feel at times as though our world really does pine after that which tears down. Like we yearn for and keep going back to things that separate and destroy, such that our souls, our world, has become weary beneath the weight of it all. And then we gather and we hear the gospel proclamation. We hear the good news of Christmas, and it's as though something is awakened within us, as if our souls, feeling their worth, are awakened to a new world of hope and peace and love and joy, to a world of new possibilities. And that's just it, the wonder of all wonders tonight. The message that gets reiterated over and over again in all the small, easy-to-miss details of these very familiar yet very strange Christmas scriptures is that, unlike our world, God is not ashamed of the lowly or of our lowliness. God is not only unashamed of our messiness, God chooses to enter fully into our world through the cracks of our brokenness. And our Christmas stories remind us that it has always been this way. It has always been into such broken and hurting places that God chooses to be born among us. To a weary and traumatized and displaced people surrounded by the ravages of war, on them the prophet Isaiah declares, on them the light of God has shined. Not on the powerful, conquering kings, the armies of their empires that had laid them low, but on these forgotten ones of the world. To a weary and exhausted, poor and lonely couple beneath the silent sky of Bethlehem, to those whose lives are shrouded in and silenced by shadows of hopelessness, whose souls are made to feel as though they have no worth, as though they're not enough, God says to them, greetings, my most highly favored one. This year, as I pondered the meaning and mystery of Christmas, this message, I was captured by two true stories. In the late 1930s and early 40s, as Hitler and his white nationalist Nazi party rose to power and cast a blood-stained shadow of death upon human history, many Jews, as we know, were forced into hiding. For how long they could not have known. Imagine, if you can, being confined to the cramped darkness of a cold attic, a closet. The days, the weeks, the months, the years blurring together. Birthdays passing, holidays passing, family and friends passing. All while isolated and alone. In Cologne, Germany, where a number of Jews hid themselves the entire duration of the war, there was later found an inscription etched into a cellar wall by one of them, which was recently put to music. I believe it said, I believe in the sun. I believe in the sun even when it's not shining. I believe in love. I believe in love even when I can't feel it. I believe in God. I believe in God even when I can't feel him. It's a haunting and defiant witness to the Spirit of life, to the Spirit of God surging within willing life, even there in the shadows of hopelessness and despair. Who could write such words but one who has himself been in that valley? And who could utter it there but one who had practiced its proclamation time and time again, who before ever being forced to walk this valley had placed upon their lips and within their heart the proclamation that we hear at Christmas, that God chooses to dwell among those whom our world casts aside. Right? This is not the power of positivity, but the power of experiencing God's presence even when the world, in pining after that which tears down and destroys, has cast you aside, has rendered your body and soul worthless. When God and love and light have been all but vanquished, these simple but daring lines proclaim to the world that even when locked in a cold, dark cellar, God's light is present. That God chooses them. That their life still has worth, has dignity, and nothing that the world does or says, no shadow of death can ever overcome that truth. Like a single star, this truth leads us to the places where God chooses to dwell. In Bethlehem, you who are least among the people of Judah. In a cold, dark cellar, hiding from being captured, from being deported, from being killed. On the floor, after a fall. I have a friend, a rabbi friend, who has a brain injury which sometimes causes them to fall to the floor. Now, oftentimes when this happens, people immediately rush to get them back on their feet, she says, usually before she's quite ready to do so. I think people rush to help me, she says, because they're so uncomfortable with seeing an adult lying on the floor. But what I really need is for someone to get down on the floor with me. The life-altering presence, promise, and the world-changing invitation of Christmas is that God is not ashamed to get down on the floor with us, to lie next to us in those moments that feel like we are lying in a manure-filled stable. God meets us in those places where we feel like we don't measure up. We're not good enough, aren't beautiful enough, aren't wealthy enough. God huddles close in those seasons where grief and loneliness persist, offering not a quick fix, not a quick magical fix, but an eternal unflinching presence and affirmation of our dignity, of our worth, right there where we are feeling most worthless, most alone, where our world says there is no room for you. God meets us there to show us our worth. This is the meaning of Emmanuel. The God who we proclaim at Christmas is with us. And it is indeed world-altering, because when we tear down and destroy parts of ourselves, we invariably end up doing the same to others around us. And before long, it is as though our whole world is pining after that which tears down. But at Christmas, we are reminded that another world is possible. Hope. Hope, even when it feels so impossibly far away, is possible. Peace is possible. Joy is possible. Love is possible. And it begins in a stable. It begins in the cold, dark cellars of our world. It begins in our silent nights. So take heart, friends, for there is a light that shines in every darkness. And as much as it might seem otherwise, all the shadows in the universe cannot put it out. May this promise claim you deep in your bones this Christmas. May your soul feel its worth. May all who are weary rejoice, for the Lord is come.
He appeared, and the soul
Amen.